HR Unboxed with Natalie and Faye, the Christmas special.
Well, welcome to the Rebox HR podcast, and today is the one with the Christmas party. We're very festive and Christmassy. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi Chris, we're good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm loving your Christmas outfits.
We're feeling super festive.
Yeah, it's like you've got one of those garlands that you put on your front door, hanging on your heads.
Yeah, I'm feeling very glamorous, I must admit. Thank you.
So why are we talking Christmas today? Obviously because it is December now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are now in the throes of HR's busiest season. So this is going to be a juicy one.
Excellent. So there's a lot that goes on at Christmas. We're going to be talking Christmas parties, Secret Santas, things that you can be a victim of, and things that you can do to other people without even realizing it, and things that you as a business owner need to be aware of that can happen when everybody's letting their hair down. It's Christmas time. There's less work going on, and people kind of forget that they're in a workplace, I guess. Yeah,
it's like the gloves are off for a complete season. So people will do things that they wouldn't usually do. You've got the complications of alcohol involved, Christmas party events, people wondering if they're entitled to the same time off because somebody's been let go early because it's the company Christmas party and they're allowed to get ready, and what I can't go, so then why can't I leave early? There's all sorts that comes into the mix with this one. So there's a reason why it is HR's busiest season.
Really, it actually is. So It's a minefield.
Yeah, it keeps us busy. The longest case that I've had has lasted me till April.
Wow.
So yeah, it can get messy very quickly. So it's really important that employers know exactly what to look for and how to take preventative steps to stay out of the HR hot water, but also so that they're doing right by their employees as well.
Fantastic. Now we're going to kick things off with a survey because we've done a little bit of research. We've got our own exclusive stats. So tell me about the survey. How did that happen?
So we have a page on LinkedIn, which is obviously the HR Unboxed podcast page. And we asked our viewers, so we conducted a survey and we asked our listeners we asked them two questions. The first one, where 50% of our listeners have actually claimed to have received an inappropriate Secret Santa gift.
Wow. So half of people have had a gift on Secret Santa that they've thought, oh, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. That's not acceptable. No. There's something a little bit wrong there.
Yeah, I don't know how honest I can be without censoring the podcast, but I've seen... actually physically been there when people have opened their Secret Santa gifts in an office, and there has been adult toys given as gifts. But I've also received one myself, which I think is absolutely genius. So to put it in
Not an adult toy, but an inappropriate Secret Santa gift.
No, just to be clear, I haven't received an adult toy. However, I have received what I would call a genius gift, and it's obviously where somebody has said, tell me about Natalie. So it could be a friend, a partner or something. And they've just said, yeah, she's really short. So from our listeners' perspective, because obviously they don't see Faye and I in real life, I'm only 5'1", so I'm very small. And my Secret Santa gift, which is genius, was a small terracotta pot and the world's tiniest bag of Miracle Grow.
Oh, and you were supposed to plant yourself in that.
I'm imagining that's what they were kind of hoping, was that, for Christmas she might just wish to be a bit taller.
So it didn't work then?
No, sadly not, no. But thank you, whoever gave me that gift, because it's something I'll always remember, and I took as a bit of a joke, but I can understand that some people might take huge offence to something like that. I don't think Secret Santa's supposed to be serious.
I think the problem with Secret Santa is that it is just that. You don't know who's given you the inappropriate present. So as HR, do you have the authority to kind of investigate who's sent the Secret Santa presents and get to the bottom of it?
If somebody is massively offended by something they've received in the workplace with a work event, because technically that is what this still comes down to, then of course you would have to then investigate to ensure that person is satisfied with a process behind receiving something that they deem to be inappropriate. Now, in terms of where this goes, action points and anything anything further to kind of come of it, that is going to be very dependent on the whole situation. But of course, as with anything, it still comes down to somebody being disgruntled in a workplace. So if that happens, then of course managers, HR, whoever needs to get involved will still get involved to that point. But as far as I'm aware, I haven't actually come across anybody that has had any action like that taken. So I'd be interested to know if anybody wants to write in and let us know if they've actually dealt with any real situations with receiving gifts, because I think it is taken in jest, but I know some people might just cross that line.
I think people hide behind the anonymity and they think they can get away with it, and it's their chance to kind of, if they've got somebody who they're not the biggest fan of in the office, to just hurt their feelings because they know what they're sensitive about, and it's not nice,
Well, no, and I think if it comes to that and it is something that causes any kind of distress to somebody or intimidates or makes somebody feel pretty rubbish about themselves, such a festive, joyful time, then of course, no, that's completely inappropriate. We're not out there to create that with people, with colleagues, even if it is anonymous and you might not know who you are. But if it does come to an investigation and this is deemed to be absolutely inappropriate, then of course you are going to be put in the spotlight. It will come back.
Yeah.
So kind of don't do that.
Some people take it as an opportunity to embarrass their boss as well. And I can understand why people would feel very uncomfortable with things like that. And it's not, it shouldn't be an opportunity to get at someone. No. It should just be simply a bit of fun. Yeah. And they say, well, you shouldn't really police people, that we're all grown adults here. We hear that all the time. And it's like, well, actually, if you don't outline those expectations of what sensible looks like or what reasonable looks like, it gets out of hand pretty quickly. It's like, gloves are off, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, my rule of thumb is if it's not something you'd be comfortable opening in front of your relatives around the Christmas tree, then it probably shouldn't be given to somebody in an office.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
Is that a good rule of thumb?
Yeah.
It's the Secret Santa rule. Do you think actually you can prevent these kind of situations by laying down some expectations when you're doing a Secret Santa in the workplace and just say on the instructions, please, no inappropriate presents this year or something like that? Or does that just give people the idea to do it even more?
I know that businesses that have done that and they've just said that the cost is X, please don't put anything offensive or inappropriate in there. I think Secret Santa as a whole is quite difficult to get right anyway, purely because if you buy someone, I don't know, like a bath bomb or something like that, you don't know if that person has sensitive skin and things like that. But a lot of people opt for things like vouchers and like buy them a coffee or something that they're going to use. I know that sounds quite boring, but that person might not be able to afford to buy themselves a coffee or to treat themselves. So there is a degree of thought that I think goes into some of the presents that I've seen. But as a whole, I think it's just a little bit of fun, but just don't take it to the extreme, because you will find yourself in the hot water.
I think some people do surprise Secret Santa where everybody just buys a gift and you get one at random, and it's just something that you think everybody would like, and like what you got me, which is really nice. These little chocolates, really sweet. I mean, anybody would be happy with that, unless maybe they're on a diet or they're diabetic, or a lot of people could be really offended by this, though, Natalie. So you've got to be careful with your gifting.
I should have said, Chris, I'm thinking of buying you this. Is this okay to do? And it does feel like you have to really think about everything. But just keep it to a box of biscuits or something like that. Just don't go and get the adult toys and try and embarrass your boss, because it doesn't end out very well.
Okay, now we're going to come on to something else now, which is how to deal with Christmas parties at work and how to organise them properly. And if you're a boss and you're organising a Christmas party, things that you probably haven't even crossed your mind when you're putting a Christmas party together. And one of those is doing a risk assessment for a Christmas party. Seriously, do we really need to go to that extreme?
So 45% of our second poll said that they wanted to know how to deal with inappropriate behaviour at Christmas parties. And I've seen some pretty extreme Christmas parties in my HR life cycle, shall we say, including one chap who decided to rip off a urinal and go and dance to George Michael's Careless Whisper in the middle of the Christmas party with said urinal. So, yeah.
That's crazy. And he got the wrong music video. That was outside where he was in the public toilet. So it doesn't even work for Careless Whisper.
No, absolutely not. He could have actually made it like festive appropriate, but he didn't go to that. I don't think it was that well thought out.
It doesn't sound it.
No, but we do. And HR, I think, generally dread the Christmas party because there is so much that has to go into organising these things. It's not just a case of getting a venue and saying it's £45 a head or whatever that looks like. It's, there's the risk assessments that come into it now because obviously we've got the prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace legislation that's come in that we briefly spoke about on the previous episode. So, Faye's been very busy with those already.
So I guess what you would put in the risk assessment is looking at potential things that might happen at a Christmas party and how you mitigate against those risks and what measures you can put in place to reduce the likelihood of something like that happening. So what are the kind of things that you should be thinking about when you do that risk assessment?
So I think one of the main things is you need to think to yourself, when we go to this event, could somebody possibly have an accident or hurt themselves? And I think that's one of the biggest things, wherever the venue is being held, and typically these aren't on site at your local offices, so you probably don't know the venue as well. So you're going off site for starters. So what does that look like? So it's terms of asking yourself those questions. So do you know the fire safety for that particular venue? Do you know what the protocol of that looks like? It may seem a bit, that's not to do with me, that's the venue's problem. But the employer has a liability to keep staff safe, and this is a work-related gathering. As goes to the sexual harassment piece, that become law on the 26th of October. So in terms of having a risk assessment for that, that then sits alongside, you're in a social gathering still, a work social gathering, just to add that context. So, but
you're right. I think a lot of employers would assume that when staff are at a party at a venue that's been organised by another company, because it's their venue, it's their Christmas parties that they're organising, that they would be responsible for health and safety and for what goes on within that area. But where do you draw the line? What's the responsibility of your company and what's the responsibility of the venue? And things like fire risk assessments, surely the venue will have one of those. And is that something that you put as an appendix to your own risk assessment, or is it just going through that due diligence to make sure that they have got those measures in place?
I think, going and doing due diligence. I mean, a lot of venues at this time of year would have all the appropriate cause and actions and risk assessments and bits and pieces in place, but it's just making sure they are. So yes, whilst I'm not suggesting that each person has to go out to the venue and say, well, I need a robust, system of your fire exits and stuff. I think it doesn't hurt just to have an understanding, or at least maybe put a responsible person in play to say, if we all go to this venue, what does that look like? And when we say hazards, it's just everything from, if you're doing a free bar and there's excess alcohol, and what does then that look like? Because it is still a risk factor, because that changes people's behaviours and languages and can cause distress. So, when I say risk assessment, it might seem quite broad, but I think it's just having that first opinion of, if we go to this work event, is there any risk? What does that probably look like? It's not to say that you're responsible, because the idea of the risk assessment associates those points with who is then responsible for that. And if you can tick it all off and say that that's a venue, then that's fantastic, because you've kind of looked into it. I think just having the consideration in play to begin with can help mitigate some things to make sure the onus isn't on the employer.
And what are the sort of parameters of what is a Christmas party and what isn't? So if they finish the Christmas party at a certain time and then go for a drink in the bar of the hotel that's not in the same place that the party was, is that still officially part of the party, or is that something else? If they all go off in a taxi together to a nightclub afterwards, is that still the party, or is that after the party, but is it still the workplace? I don't know, where do you draw the line?
Well, this is it. And I think if you had the answer to that, you'd be a very wealthy man, Chris. So in terms of if there was to be like an after party unofficially, then technically if something goes wrong, the chances are the employee is going to say, well, it was a work organised event and all of us went afterwards, or there was a couple of people that decided to go home, and then there was a few people that joined at the bar later, that still technically could fall under the employer's liability, so to speak. So we have to be incredibly careful and clear. And I know it sounds like it's HR for HR's sake, but we really do need to be clear on what is contained within that work event. So being very specific about what those expectations are on people's behaviour, and being honest with you, Faye and I have not stopped writing work events policies over the past 2 weeks. People are becoming much more aware of what those liabilities look like. And of course, with the sexual harassment piece, that's actually an amendment to the Equality Act. So with that in place, you could also face some form of discriminatory claim, which is uncapped, which is a lot of money, for any organisation, a claim is worth a lot of money. So we do need to be proactively taking those steps to prevent those things from happening in the first place.
Absolutely. And I think also, if you're there as well as the employer at this sort of after party, then it's hard to say, oh, this was nothing to do with me, because you will probably be there at the time that something's happening, even if you're not aware of what's going on. And that's the other thing. When there's loud music and you can't hear all the conversations, stuff can be going on, and it goes completely over your head because you have no idea, and somebody runs off in tears and you think, oh my gosh, what just happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are things, if anything's going to happen, a lot of people build up any concerns that they have, and then they let it go at the Christmas party. So I had a lady once who was the quietest soul that you could ever imagine, and she was quite happy. She worked in payroll, and she would just process the payroll on a monthly and then you would hear nothing really from her. Anyway, at the Christmas party, she insisted on calling everyone by their payroll number. So she'd had a few sherries and she insisted on calling everyone by their payroll number, which a lot of people found amusing, but a lot of people just didn't get it and were like, is there something wrong with her? Does she need something? And I said, what is she doing? And they said, she just said a load of numbers at me that don't make any sense. And I was like, was it your payroll number by any chance? So yeah, that was the second person that came up to me that night. And I thought she was just being funny, but she said that she had a really bad reaction to alcohol, and that she had only one glass, but it affects her so badly that she feels like she's out of control. And she was so embarrassed, bless her. I mean, she didn't say anything offensive, but she then just resigned and left afterwards because she was like, I can't carry on like this. And I felt really bad for her. I'm like, there's no need to do that. And she said, everyone will remember Natalie, and I just don't want to put myself through it. So the repercussions for the individual are just as great. And, if there is drink involved, then people, the employer may have to look at how are people getting home. Because if you've got someone who's taken it to the extreme, and some employers will actually issue vouchers at Christmas parties so that there's no extreme consumption going on, but people will always say, oh, take my voucher because I'm not drinking tonight.
I think that will backfire because the people that are driving will give their vouchers to everybody else, and then the person that really wants to have a few too many will just have everybody's vouchers, and it'll be almost, and this happens as well, sometimes everybody decides, oh, let's get so-and-so drunk, and it might be the quiet girl from payroll that they think, oh, this will be interesting, see what she's like when she comes out of a shell, and then she's mortified afterwards, like you say.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do find that these situations can go from one extreme to another. So obviously the employer does need to be mindful that they have a duty of care to make sure that those who are, they don't seem themselves, or they are, really, really drunk or under the influence, then there needs to be a way of being able to get those people home. So if they are thinking of organising an event, make sure you factored that into your risk assessments and so forth, just in case.
Oh, do you know what I did once? This was so embarrassing. And this could probably get me in a lot of trouble, but this was like a long time ago. But I was giving people a lift home from a party, and it was kind of people that I worked with. And I had no idea who was in the back of my car. And I started saying, oh, did you see what so-and-so was doing? He was so drunk and he was just literally embarrassing himself. And then I heard this voice behind me going, I don't think you realise I'm in the back of your car. Oh no, so embarrassing. But yeah, it can happen.
Yeah, it can, can't it? We see everything, don't we, Faye? I don't think anything that people could say or do could actually surprise us.
I think one thing as well to think is that these can create lasting impressions. So, whatever goes on at the social gathering aspect, not even just Christmas, but just generally, if it gets out of hand, then that stays. And, like you rightly said with that particular lady, she had to resign. Like, that's the extremes that this can go to if it goes wrong. And you have to remember that you are there to represent the company. A lot of these work gatherings, you're there as a face or the faces of a brand, of a company. There's reputation on the line here as well if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe you should offer a sort of HR chaperone service where you come along to all the parties and just stop any naughty behaviour.
I would love that.
We'd look like bouncers, wouldn't we? We would be in like suits and stuff with little badges on saying HR patrol or something.
Responsible person.
Yeah, do you know what? I'd be the one buying you drinks all night just to kind of get you to be the ones that embarrass yourself.
You don't want to do that. Faye and I can get quite feisty, so we like the mocktails now. We stick to those just to keep it safe.
It's a safe way. But the thing is, there's so many opportunities to go out and let your hair down when you're not with your work colleagues, and you've got to think about what the consequences are going to be. And I think also it's not just Christmas parties, because I was hosting an awards night before last, and people get so drunk at these kind of events, and you've just won an award. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And I'd imagine that those kind of events, people are sat around the table, there's a lot of wine flowing, and equally with Christmas parties, any kind of staff night out, there's opportunities for things to go wrong.
Yeah, we've seen it, haven't we?
Yeah.
When we've been to quite a few awards over the recent years, and we have seen extremes of one or the other. So as I said, Faye and I are quite sensible, so we'll have a glass of fizz at the beginning, and the rest of the evening will tend to be on either mocktails, or we will go for just Diet Coke or something. We won't put ourselves in that position. We have to lead by example, and it's not because we're not fun, it's just that we're very aware of vulnerabilities around our surroundings, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, do you have any other kind of case studies of when things have gone horribly wrong at Christmas parties?
Oh God,
I think there's there's so many people with so many stories in terms of things that have gone wrong. I mean, with the alcohol consumption piece, just going back to that, I think it is important to recognise that there is, to do things such as making sure that there is non-alcoholic options available, and maybe even making sure there's a food source or a meal behind what that looks like, because it can help with the alcohol consumption, and it can just help reduce that kind of build up of alcohol. If somebody comes in and says, do you know what, I've not eaten since breakfast, but here I am on all the bottles of wine, and you're just thinking this could go wrong very, very quickly. And so I do think there's just so many things that could potentially go wrong with that. I mean, in terms of incidents, I mean, I have been witness to one, but unfortunately I'm not at liberty to discuss that on the podcast today. I do apologise, but yeah, whether Natalie, you've seen some in your years at Christmas parties.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, we tend to avoid. HR likes to avoid the Christmas party as much as feasibly possible, and it's not because we're antisocial. It's because of the repercussions that can come from that and the exposure to certain situations. I mean, I've been told that I'm the responsible person, so I've been made to go by my bosses because they didn't want to go. But on the other extreme, I know a lot of companies that have stopped doing Christmas parties altogether purely because they're worried about what those repercussions could look like, or if something does go wrong, then it's going to keep them busy, and then they're going to have to focus on that rather than what the business needs come the new year. So there is a lot that people factor into all of this, and I think it's sensible to do so. But yeah, and then people go, oh, what's your company doing for Christmas this year? Oh, we're not having one, because years gone by somebody has ruined it somewhere down the line. And we've seen recent posts on LinkedIn with people saying it's unfair that they've not been allowed to leave early just because they're not attending the Christmas party. And it's like, well, these are the little niggly things that stop people from having Christmas parties in the first place. Now, if it's an employee's choice not to go to the Christmas party, then no, it's not discriminatory. I've seen discrimination thrown around a lot of the time. It's not discriminatory on that person to say, well, actually, you're not going, but the rest can leave early and you need to stay in the office and finish your core hours. I mean, some of the advice on there was quite shocking, where they said, oh, well, if you leave early, nobody's going to know. And we're like, that's absence without leave and it's gross misconduct. Why would you be encouraging someone that you don't know on a social media platform to basically play truant and get yourself into trouble, because you're going to get in trouble, not that
not
other
them.
person. Yeah.
I just think don't listen to what people tell you on social media. It's not necessarily people that actually have any idea what they're talking about. They're just saying, oh, I just leave early. It doesn't mean, you could have thought of that yourself. It doesn't mean it's advice. It's just saying, oh, here's an idea. Yeah, it's a bad idea. Don't do it. So I think another thing that's really interesting, if you're an employer and you're at an event, something kicks off, something happens, and you think, right, how do I deal with this? What is the process? Do you start collecting statements on the night from people? Do you go around and start preserving evidence, get little plastic bags out and put things in? What's the process?
It depends what evidence you're gathering.
Yeah, that could be the question, couldn't it? Do we pick up glasses? Well, you consume this many drinks. It must be you. I mean, I'd say, look, once you have, kind of controlled the immediate threat, danger situation, and you have that somewhat contained, it's with a view that then you let the night settle. There's nothing worse than trying to go to, a table, a group of people that are, one, emotive, two, fueled with alcohol, and three, the incident is still is probably still ongoing even in that moment, because they're like, well, he said this to me and she did that. It's far too emotive to try and deal with that and get probably sort of compass mentis statements from people where they actually know and can give you an actual outline of what actually happened. And so I would advise probably taking that then into the next day or week or whatever of work when you return. And it's with a view then everybody is kind of out of that kind of stage, that they've kind of got probably a clearer picture from what they can recall, and you will get a lot more of sensitive statements back that, people might not feel that they want to deliver everything on that evening and ruin the atmosphere. But yeah, I'd probably wait until you're back in the office before probing.
Fantastic. Okay, now the next thing to talk about is going to be annual leave and how it affects annual leave when people go to Christmas parties, and whether people are expected to come into work the day after the work event if it's held in the week, unless they've booked annual leave. Is it kind of acceptable to have a day off when everybody's been out on the rouse the night before and you think, well, the boss isn't going to be in because you saw the state of him last night, let's turn up at lunchtime?
Yeah, so there's also the consideration of drug and alcohol policies. A lot of the question we've been asked recently is, are we allowed to test employees for drugs and alcohol? Yes, you are, providing you have a policy in place. However, I always recommend it being done by a third professional party, purely because otherwise it could be seen as a biased process. It could be targeted. There's all sorts of things that come out of that. So I'll only touch upon that little bit. When we're looking at annual leave, we've just mentioned about people being allowed to leave early, and then whether they're entitled to have that same accessibility if they are, not going to the party. But we've also got things like the holiday booking procedures. So most of the sensible organisations out there will put their Christmas party on a Friday night. Purely because if you're working Monday to Friday, Friday seems the sensible option, and then people don't have to come in on a Saturday. Most businesses are having them at these big gatherings at hotels and things like that, so there's accommodation nearby.
Yep.
So there's no risk of drink driving, because that is a real issue. And as we know, the stats have increased around drink driving of late, so we need to be very aware of how people are getting to and from the venue.
So I think as an employer, you need to just make sure no one's at risk of that. So if you see somebody turn up in their car and then they're having a few drinks, make sure they're booking a taxi.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so, so important. But I think that's why a lot of employers are being sensible and literally having that at hotel sites that people can book rooms. Some employers have been quite generous and booked the rooms to make sure people don't drink and drive. And then, of course, if it is in the middle of the week, then it should be holiday booked on a first come, first served basis. And then what they're able to do is to make sure that it is a fair process. A lot of people will say, oh, it's not very fair because such and such has got the day off and things like that. If you keep it on a first come, first served basis, there's no risk of bias there and things like that. So just make sure you've got a solid booking procedure rather than the holiday forms that are on somebody's desk or in a spreadsheet somewhere, just so that it is very clear who has put that in and when. And of course, remind employees about their annual leave. A lot of people leave their holidays right up until the end of the year if you've got a holiday year from January to December. And then the employer's like, well, I've got no one working in December because everyone's saved their holiday. So I think it's really important that people run regular reports on their annual leave throughout the year and remind people to take those breaks.
But if you're somebody that really doesn't like working, especially the bit between Christmas and New Year, where there's really no point coming into work because nothing happens, but some places just have this system where everybody has to come in for one day between Christmas and New Year. And do you have the right to say, actually, no, I've got annual leave that I want to book and I want to use it. Please let me use it.
Yeah, you can request it, obviously, but if there is an operational need to cover the phones, it depends on sector and industry and what exactly they're working on and why they have that coverage. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to say, right, I'm drawing a line at Christmas. So we actually break up on the 20th this year and we're not coming back in until January. So Faye and I get some proper downtime from the chaos that is likely to ensue.
So if something kicks off, it's just got to wait till January.
There's that. I'm on call, obviously. So it's one of those where, one of the perks of being a business owner is that I get all of the tea spilt over Christmas. And then Faye more than likely gets a phone call from me going, goodness, this has kicked off at such and such client. This is what we need to sort out. And she will dip in and just say, yeah, it's part and parcel of the role, because Faye and I do work on that reliability and flexibility. And I think flexibility is so important and it's so valuable to employees as well. So I'm like, you don't have to rush and do all of your Christmas shop on Christmas Eve, Faye. Just get it done on whatever day you can, and take that time, because balance is so important. But I'm very aware that it is a high pressure time of year for us, so we have to be mindful of what that looks like on a personal level as well, which I think takes us quite nicely into mental health at Christmas time.
Yeah, so it's a difficult time for a lot of people, and I think you feel like you're under pressure to be happy because it's the season of joy and happiness and everything, but actually it's a time where you miss people that you've lost a lot more because they're not there. The pressure is a lot higher. You're stuck with your relatives for a lot more time than you normally would be, and it can be really, really tough, can't it?
I think it's important to understand that not everybody experiences the same Christmas, and this is for a multitude of reasons. This could be finances, thinking, gosh, how am I going to put, toys under the tree this year? Have you got families and such? This comes down to family itself. Like you said, you're stuck with relatives that you don't see from one year to the next, only at Christmas, and nobody gets on. And it could be grief,
It's like EastEnders.
Yes,
it's like you just know every year.
Absolutely. It could literally be a soap episode at some people's Christmas tables and they just think, oh, I can't think of anything worse. So I get that, and then there's the grief piece, the missing of people sat in the chair that were here last year. So I get there's so many reasons why Christmas doesn't always fit how you think it should at this time of year when everyone's happy and they're shopping and they're seeing people and they're festive and they're doing activities. And then some people don't, and that's fine too. But I think this really then underpins the mental health aspect around this time of year. I mean, in terms of, taking that then into the workplace, I think it's very important for managers and senior members alike for, understanding what that looks like with behavioural changes. you know, the person could, or an employee could be fine right up until, and then you kind of hit November, and then there's kind of like a lull, and the person becomes a little bit more disengaged, and the person then, you know, has different behavioural changes and isn't so there, should we say, so present in their day to day. It's signs like that I think really do need to be addressed. And I think by signposting then, or just having a conversation with that employee to find out what's going on, just to make sure they are okay, you know, to have a welfare chat with them, take them aside. It doesn't have to be massively formal. Get a coffee and just say, you know, is everything okay? And you'll be surprised what that one statement can pull up.
I think sometimes if people haven't had training in doing that, they feel like, oh, I shouldn't do that because I wouldn't know what to say. But it's more just letting the other person talk, just creating an opportunity in a situation where they can get it off their chest and just like you say, just, is everything okay? And just let them lead it.
I think by just not having that formal, you know, can you see me in my office? Don't probably position yourself like that.
Put it in the Outlook calendar, a mental health checkup.
Send them a little meeting invite. Probably don't do it like that. Just probably, you know, say, should we grab a coffee? Or, you know, when they're making their way to the canteen, just maybe sit with them and just say, you know, is everything all right? Is everything going all right? You're just having these kind of open-ended questions so they can come back with a yes, no, maybe, not sure. I mean, if you see things becoming slightly more serious in terms that it's affecting their work, then of course management are going to get involved anyway and just saying, look, I've seen a bit of a lull, a bit of a dip in your day-to-day. What's going on? Is there a reason behind that? And again, it just kind of opens the floor for them to say how they're feeling. Yeah. So.
And I think also just not assuming that you can tell how a person's feeling by looking at them. And sometimes people hide it very well in the workplace, and they might be going through all sorts of things that you're not aware of, putting a brave face on it and struggling in ways that you might not even realise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that Rebox has done is partnered with a specialised company that does help with mental health in the workplace. Now, the idea behind that is that there are posters and support pieces out there that an employee can come across and they can access the help themselves. And it's up to 9 months worth of support with a mental health expert, and they have ongoing help, workplace, you know, kind of coping strategies and bits and pieces. So if they don't feel comfortable then speaking to management or being so open, or you just think that actually that person's, you know, great and fine because they're covering it very well, and they think, I don't really want to let them know, but what can I do? So what we're doing as Rebox is letting our clients know that we actually have this active support arm, and we can now signpost employees to either one, go through management to utilise it, or just go and find it and use it themselves. So that I think is great if they want that extra, you know. So
it's something that you could send out to everyone on the team and say, we've got this new service. If you go to this website or call this number, if you are struggling, then you can talk to somebody. And because you've sent it to everyone, no one feels singled out and picked on. And yeah, they just do that if they need to, whenever.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good idea for management to use just all year round. I'll be honest, we don't have to just keep it for Christmas, but yeah, absolutely. I know with one of our clients, we've just recently set that up, and we've done a announcement on our Breathe portal, just to say, look, we know it's that time of year. We really prioritise the well-being of our employees. Please go and look at this in the poster with the QR code, and all information is there so they can help themselves, or at least go to management if they just want extra information on what that looks like. And I think it's just really important. So, yeah.
And you've got a Christmas guide specifically about Christmas time and mental health.
Yeah,
or
we
just
do.
Generally?
So we do have 2 guides actually for line managers and business owners if anyone is interested. So they're completely free. Just get in touch with us and we'll be able to send a copy out to them. But we will have a guide to Christmas parties, you'll be pleased to know. Mm-hmm. And we also have a comprehensive guide, or the line manager's guide to mental health at work. So this details the type of questions they should ask, the type of questions they shouldn't ask, because most of the time people will come to us and not ask us what what they can say. They'll ask us, right, what are the things we shouldn't say? So this gives them that guidance that they need. And of course, Faye and I are always around for additional support. So if people want to call us and actually speak to us, they're welcome to do that.
So what are some of the things that you shouldn't say, for example?
So anything that could be discriminatory or borderline discriminatory.
Okay, so you probably shouldn't say those things, but it's okay to say, oh, are you okay? I noticed you're not your usual self, or, oh, you're a bit down in the dumps today, aren't you? Go on, grumpy socks. I mean, things like that, probably not good.
Exactly. There's a distinct difference between the two. And the phrasing that you used initially, Chris, is absolutely spot on. I have noticed, because then it may not be obvious to that person that they've been displaying those behaviours, or that they're not in their usual selves in one way or another. So just by utilising that phrase, I have noticed that, just keep it concise, but also don't ramble on about your own experiences, because people tend to do that. Now, Faye and I are both mental health awareness trained through Mental Health England. It's very important that we do that, given the job that we do, but I check in regularly on Faye, and Faye regularly checks in on me as well. So it's really important that people don't just say, oh, well, when I was going through this, because if you've met one person who's a bit down in the dumps, you've met one person, it's not the same for everybody. And when you're looking at mental health at work, a lot of people try to put it in more of like a checklist scenario. And that is really difficult for people to, you can't put people in boxes, or people are not walking policies, as Faye and I use.
That's your catchphrase.
We love that. People are not walking policies. I think we might need to rebrand. So people aren't walking policies, and you need to be very aware of the best people to know if something isn't right is the line managers. And I think that businesses of all shapes and sizes should be investing in supporting that line management group of people, because they will know if there's something not right with their team member, but also they have that connection with higher management as well. So it's really important that they keep that channel of communication going, but they're consistent with that approach. That is so, so important.
Absolutely. And I think we've covered a lot of very important areas on the podcast today, and there's a lot to unpack there. So if you want those guides, that's a useful kind of handy reference to all of the things to think about as we're getting into Christmas party season, which is looming fast.
It is. Faye and I've got our Christmas party booked, so we're going up for a very sensible meal, which you'll be pleased to know.
Is there going to be an after party?
There might be. Yeah, it'll be a HR Unboxed, after party with the pair of us. We've had a sensational year. We're not going to lie. We've had a fantastic year. We've launched the podcast with you. We've seen figures of listeners that we would never have dreamed of. And, I just want to say a very Merry Christmas to all of our listeners, and thank you so much for joining us. And they'll be pleased to know that episode 6 will be joining us in January 2025.
2025, gosh.
Wow. Have we got a preview? Have we got a title for it yet?
We could call it the after party.
The one with the New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. The month after the month before.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with your Christmas parties. Thank you very much. And well done on all of your success this year. And we will see you in 2025.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
See you on the other side.